A warm welcome back to our webinar series. We wish you all a very happy new year, and it's amazing new year that is going to be for all of us. So to start with the session, let me hand over to Dr. Rohantha to give a better explanation and to give a warmer introduction about what's the expertise and why is she joining us today. With that, Doctor, over to you.
Thank you, Kaushali, and I'd like to wish every one of you a fantastic 2021. And we have today a very honored guest, a guest who is the ambassador to Lebanon and Syria, joining the Sri Lankan Foreign Service 23 years ago, a senior career diplomat. Ambassador Shani Karunaratne went on to hold very senior, distinguished leadership positions, not only in Sri Lanka missions abroad, but also at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Prior to the taking of office in Lebanon, she was the Deputy Chief of Mission at Sri Lanka Missions to China, where she was recognized as one of the 5 super ambassadors. She also has received national honors from the President of Sri Lanka in recognition of her contribution as an outstanding Sri Lankan woman who brought international repute to Sri Lanka. Ambassador Shani Karunaratne holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Peradeniya and has earned 2 postgraduate degrees from the University of Colombo. Ambassador is an honored person who has taken a lot of time on the tourism sector when she was the ambassador in China, and right now she's also studying for the PhD at the University of Colombo, and it's actually an honor, madam, to have you, and it's actually lovely to see you again. I'd like to invite you to say a few words, and then after that we can have a few Q&A session. Over to you, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rohantha Thorala. And I'm so happy to be here today. In fact, I started my life as a teacher. I taught in a school, and after that I taught at the University of Kalani. And I'm always so happy to be part of the student community in some way or the other. I think being with students, they inspire all of us quite a lot. We get good ideas from young people. I'm so happy to be with you. I must make a small correction. When I was counting, I think this is my 26th year as a diplomatic officer. So I must have given one of my older CVs to Dr. Rohantha. But nevertheless, seems like a long time. Some of you must be less than 26 years old at the moment. So I think my career as a diplomat is older than you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you sincerely. And just a few thoughts, Ambassador, and I sincerely appreciate you for taking your time off to be with us. There's one question coming which says that how structured is business in Syria and Lebanon, as the borders are porous? Because it's essentially a landlocked kind of a country. So I know that you are moved from China, which is a different experience. How do you see this, madam?
Syria is not exactly landlocked. It has a seashore. It's one of the corners of the Silk Road, the Syrian harbors. And beyond Syrian harbors would be the Italian harbors, part of the Silk Road. Porous in the sense, yes, from up to 2011, the trade between Sri Lanka and Syria happened in one way, that they were direct imports. And post 2011, it became a bit more complicated with external pressures, and at the moment we are doing tea trade. It is on a declining trend due to, we need hard currencies, and this is something they don't have. But tea penetrates from Turkey more than Lebanon, because Lebanese population is a coffee drinking nation, whereas Syria is a tea drinking nation. We have a border. If you drive about 1.5 hours from where I am, you reach Syrian borders. But many things go from Lebanon to Syria, but tea especially comes from Turkey. And we have statistics, I think, for a discussion of this nature. Numbers are insignificant, but still Syria is one of our major tea importers, but we don't have direct statistics, because we have the numbers that are going to Turkey, but we don't know the percentage that will go from Turkish borders to Syria. But trade is happening, because agricultural imports and exports have lesser restriction, so it can be done.
So how does Ceylon tea perform, Your Excellency, in those markets? Because I think almost 75% of the total imports to Lebanon is for Ceylon tea in terms of our export composition. So in that light, how do you see how this brand is driving itself?
Ceylon tea, in fact, you may recall that when this huge explosion happened in Lebanon, we gave a consignment of tea, 1,770 kilos. We gave as a donation, as a goodwill gesture to Lebanese, and that was very well taken. And as a brand, they do understand that tea coming from Sri Lanka is Ceylon tea, and that it is the best in the world. The tea imports to Lebanon is a niche market, because the coffee to tea ratio is 80 to 20, 80 coffee to 20 tea drinkers in Lebanon, whereas in Syria it is the other way around. Tea to coffee ratio, that is, tea is higher. Most people drink tea, different kinds of tea. This is higher. As a tea market, I think it is easier to sell tea in Syria than to sell it in Lebanon. In Lebanon, tea is a stylish drink that people drink. Fashionable people would say they would drink tea. Health conscious people, then people who are watching their weight, they would emphasize on tea. Whereas in Syria, people will talk about drinking tea like the way they talk about drinking coffee here in Lebanon.
Right. So, Madam, I mean, we know there are a lot of different things that happen in the last 2 to 3 months, but I think the pandemic has really taken a lot of our time. What are the kinds of strategies are we kind of implementing to get the best out of the pandemic? Because we know that there is a story to say that the black tea increases our immunity, and that immunity helps us to fight the virus. What is your thought on this, Your Excellency?
We actually did a promotion at the Chamber of Commerce and agriculture of Beirut and Mount Lebanon a few months ago. We were promoting Ceylon tea by distributing the tea masks here in Lebanon, which we have done in Syria as well. In Syria, when we gave the masks, people knew exactly what it was because they were a bit familiar with the logo. But here in Lebanon, we have tried to retain our market. It's a matter of retaining the market share. And we have every time talked about the medicinal values of drinking tea and health benefits, etc. We also got a lot of free publicity because there was a bit of a controversy that happened when we handed over the tea. People of Lebanon felt that the tea had been given to the president of Lebanon. So we got quite a lot of publicity. In fact, it was so interesting. People saw me in a mall or somewhere, they want to take a selfie. And so I am at the moment like a symbol of Ceylon tea. I try in fact to wear kind of greenish colors and try to do a personal thing. I got a bit of celebrity status, if I may say so, with this free publicity that we got, and it's huge, and we must capitalize on this because it was something unexpected. But I think things happened in rather mysterious and not so pre-planned ways, but it goes to our benefit. So I think this idea of Sri Lanka, when we proposed to Sri Lanka to give this tea consignment, we did it as a goodwill gesture because you may recall that over 300,000 houses broke completely, and so many people were homeless. And I mean, this happened in Ashrafi area where the very rich people live, aristocratic people live in that area. So so this is something that was very well received, and many people spoke about Ceylon tea, and people spoke about Sri Lanka, people spoke about friendship, people-to-people contact, various things. I think it was an excellent opportunity for us as well, even though it was unintentional.
How bad, ma'am? I know you talked about the pandemic. I mean, what is the status of the pandemic at that end?
At that time, it was not so bad. It was a few hundred patients per day. But now it is going in few thousands, like 3,000 new patients per day, and there are different strains. Some people get very, very sick. In fact, we have some people at the hospitals, Sri Lankans. Some people are extremely ill, and some people, they don't look ill at all. They don't even know. When they test only, they know that they are COVID-19 positive. So these must be the different strains of COVID. But if you go to Syria, in Syria, there's hardly, you don't see people with masks, you don't see people restraining themselves or keeping 1 meter distance. In fact, I have been in Syria about a month ago, and when we wore masks, people were asking, why do you want to wear a mask? Because the Syrian airports are closed, Syrian ports are closed. So the people traveling to Syria are very few. So because of this, I think they are naturally getting lesser new strains of viruses to Syria. Whereas Lebanese ports are open, Lebanese airport is open, so they have the new strain as well.
Oh. So, do you travel very often to Lebanon also, Your Excellency, or you?
No, as and when the need occurs. So when I went for a conference that happened, returning of Syrian refugees from other countries. So they had an international conference, so I went for that. But we can, because it's about from where our embassy is. You drive about 1.5 hours and you can come to the Syrian border.
Right. Going back to Ceylon tea, madam, I mean, there are two schools of thought. I remember, I mean, I was sitting on the tea board for almost 10 years, and we were driving this strategy of Ceylon tea. So, you know, we were trying to develop a category brand where we were pushing into the market saying people must come and ask for Ceylon tea by name. But then there was another school of thought by exporters who said that no, we must. I mean, people don't come and ask for Ceylon tea, but people come and ask for a particular brand. So the marketers were saying, okay, let's develop our own brand, and you know, let's try to use the tea cess money that you collect for the promotions, the promotional levy, into marketing of the brand rather than the category brand in terms of Ceylon tea. What is your view on this, Your Excellency?
I think in Lebanon, people who go to buy tea, I mean, Dilma is big in Lebanon as a brand. And people, I have seen people asking it as Dilma. And this, when I worked in Russia also, I saw this. Then I am not an expert on this subject, but I think people refer to it as tea, irrespective of Ceylon tea or Indian tea. I don't think, unless you know something about it, I don't think it makes such a big impact, because but you see, what we are interested is not the how the individual person buys tea from the supermarket. We are interested in how the importer looks at it. So in an importer's point of view, I would think that Ceylon tea is a good way. In fact, of course, an importer can buy it at the tea auction, put it under their own brand. Many people do. I have seen tea blended in Hamburg or blended in some other country. That also comes, I'm sure there's some component of Ceylon tea in it.
Right.
As a single country representing itself in the tea market, it is something like, now see, when you look at beverages, for hot beverages here in Lebanon and Syria, it is either tea or coffee. And coffee is so, you know, with so many additions and so many flavors. And tea, people drink it as is. You know, sometimes I have wondered whether there's a tea kiosk in on Chatham Street in Sri Lanka where you add various things into it and sell, you know, flavored tea, etc. Here in Lebanon and Syria, flavored teas, I mean, black tea is preferred to flavored tea when you look at individuals who are drinking. I think there's some marketing that can happen, but I think word of mouth marketing has also worked very well.
Right. So, tell us, Ambassador, I mean, you've been such a successful career diplomat. You were ranked one of the top 5 ambassadors in China. As you know, I mean, the whole world is crashing at a minus GDP growth, and the only country which is growing happens to be China at almost 1.7% growth this year. And it said that in 2028, China will even beat the United States in terms of overall economy size. So, I mean, being such a successful career diplomat, what made you get into this particular job? Because a lot of people are youngsters studying for their degree. There is a law faculty which has about 1,000 kids listening to you right now as you speak. You have MBA graduates about 300 to 400. What is your, I mean, how did you get to this particular, I mean, select this career?
I am one thing, thank you so much for the praise and flattery. I don't know whether I really deserve it. It just happened like that. In fact, the Super Ambassador was conferred because I was not actually aware of it, but all the I was invited to give speeches at universities, and all my speech was given to the database. So they had collected these speeches and all this, the amount of time I have put into it. If I am successful in some way, I think it is through hard work and not being satisfied with easy life, I suppose. In fact, I do like the challenge of doing it. In fact, sometimes people opt to go for easier countries, or things are more orderly or methodical, whereas here it is not so. But in China it was very orderly and very methodical as well. For somebody who wants to be a diplomat, I think you must have your own reasons for doing it. I was teaching English at the University of California when I sat this test to select a new batch of officers for the Sri Lanka Foreign Service. I had an interest in it, all these wonderful countries that are in the world, and initially it was the reason was that you could travel to go and see these places, and you don't have to spend any money doing it. You go and work in these places. One of my uncles, my mother's one brother was a marine engineer, so when we were little, he used to come and tell us various things about all these wonderful places that he has been to, and also, this family and the books we read, but each person joins for their own reasons. If you want to get rich, of course, in Sri Lanka you must join the private sector, I suppose. This is not a very well-paying job, and also it is not all this wearing nice clothes and all. This is only for the show, where you work. Sometimes you have to work very long hours. You should be able to stomach it, if I may say so. I think one wishes out of the university system was that I applied for a Commonwealth scholarship and I didn't get it, and I thought, oh, this is terrible, and I must do something else then, because if I'm not good enough, then I must find something that I am very good at. But we have exams, and we have to continuously keep up with new knowledge that comes, and continuously improve ourselves, read and write, this kind of thing. I'm sure you must be doing as students, reading and writing and trying to find the peer journals and what other people say about various things. So this is something that will continue as a successful diplomat if you join the Sri Lanka Foreign Service also.
Madam, before China and Russia, where were you? Where did you serve, Your Excellency?
I was in Canada. I was in Norway during the peace talks. Then yes, Canada, Russia, Norway, and then I stayed 5 years in at the ministry, and then China. I am, I think, one of the longest served person in the ministry at a given stretch, because 5 years I was from 2011 to 2016 I worked in the ministry.
Oh. So, ma'am, can you tell us a little bit about your early education, and you know, where you schooled, and do you yet keep in touch with? I mean, now that you are in very high society, you know, discussing things with the presidents of countries, which is your job. I mean, how do you? Where did you school, and can you tell us a little bit about that?
I was born in Badulla. Badulla is my mother's hometown. I was born in Badulla and I had my early education in Muses College. And then I did my, I was one of the AFS students. If you know what it is no more in Sri Lanka, but many countries have. I was an exchange student. And to El Paso High School in El Paso, Illinois. Then I came back, I went to Badulla to my mother's school and read a bachelor's degree English, Sociology and Economics.
Your Excellency, you said Badulla,
So
right?
this is how it started. I must mention, yes.
Okay.
That is where I was born.
Really? So, I mean, I also hail from Badulla because my dad is a tea planter, and we used to live in Passara. So it's so beautiful to hear you say that.
If anyone asks me where I am from, I think my entire life I have lived in other places than Badulla. But if anyone asks where I am from, I always say I am from Badulla, and that I went to Visakha Girls High School in Badulla. But I have been to other schools, but this is where my heart is.
So, have you been to Badulla once you returned from Canada, and you know, I mean, before you
Yes,
served?
actually, yes. Every time my mother's relations are there in Badulla. My great grandmother's house is there. It is the next town after Passara. So I go there very often. That's where my roots are. So I go and see the house, and there's one uncle living in that house. I've been to my old school, Visakha Girls High School. I have been invited for like school prize giving and things. I'm so happy. I'm just part of the community. Also put a group of students to China from my old school for various competitions. I'm so happy to say that this out of the 9 girls that went, 2 of them received medals. One person received the silver, one person received bronze for English oratory and for music. So like this, in fact, this was part of my citation when I got the Super Ambassador. Various people for bringing this. There is this Belt and Road international competitions, which I'm sure if there are students who are good at oratory, music, composing, then dancing. There are competitions in China every 2 years they host them. If you are good, why not you test yourself with an international group, you know where it is. And these are, if you come to a certain level, you get a gold. So there are several people who receive golds, several people who receive silver, several people who receive. It is not like a sports meet where the first person get a gold and the person get a silver. So you have, if you are good at these kind of things, you can test yourself against other young people. I think the age limit is 39, so other people can compete in them. So in fact, yes, if I am considered a super ambassador, many people have contributed to it. So the community.
Actually, what is the advice you can give youngsters who are studying for their postgraduate studies? What advice would you give them?
I don't know. I think the motivation must come from within, and I always try to do better, little bit better, like this. This is how I think, and also to like your research. If you're doing research, that research has to be useful in some ways, and should be useful in the sense, and then you can build it. And also, there shouldn't be a large gap between the theory and the practical, which I strongly believe that even in our job, sometimes it is sometimes to understand the theory we spend so much energy, and the application seems very little. So as is one of the most practical I have seen. So I think that each person must find what they like to do, where their heart is. I think successful academic people are born out of really liking what they learn. So quite good. And also something that is not too far. Your research, one of my researchers is on Tennessee Williams' plays on American life. But this I did because I was watching these movies, and one really inspired me was a movie called Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. It was a play written by a guy called Tennessee Williams, and there's a lot of social turmoil and children growing up and parents' aspirations. I'm sure that as students, your parents you do, especially somebody that they couldn't be. So if I try to do something I couldn't achieve, sometimes that young person's heart is not at that place. So this is something your first negotiation is with your family, and you try to negotiate what would I expect you to do. Sometimes public personalities are born out of my family, we don't have any diplomats. In fact, my grandparents, they were not in this job. And my love for travel made me select this job. But of course, your love for travel, let's see, you can be a captain on a ship. You know, always as you are not you're not reading English as a subject. A lot of times the perilous seas, the very difficult times, bring the best out of us. That we, if everything is going smooth and no challenge, no one is going to challenge you, then you don't know what you have. You could have many things in you that there are quite a lot of untapped resources. And unlike our time, now much more subject varieties are available and many other segments within a subject. So I'm sure you can find what you like. I'm sure all of you must be excellent students. And also another thing is that you must not limit it to the time limit. Like, you know, some people, I have realized, some people don't pass the exam at once or they get frustrated. But some people do need more time to fathom all these various things. You must find your own pace. You must challenge yourself. Let other people pass you and go if they can do faster or their pace is higher. Your pace is what you decide. And there is no age to study. Look at me, I'm still studying. Even after I retire, I will study something, you know, anything, it doesn't matter. I get bored if I don't. So this is what I can say.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and it's great that you are doing your doctorate in tourism, and you're looking at how you can open the doors to a community like China coming in, and you're researching what the insights are, and we wish you all the best for that that research study. But before we got one last question, which is, do you miss Sri Lanka?
Yes, in some ways. In fact, I am. A lot of people ask me this because when he was born and he was raised in England. I never changed my passport. I think God put me in. I was. So I do miss Sri Lanka. In fact, I do miss Sri Lankan food. So I have a cook that cooks me Sri Lankan food. At the moment, my husband is also here in Lebanon. I do miss Sri Lanka in many ways. I try to kind of, but of course it helps to be inside an embassy where I'm surrounded by Sri Lankan people. My staff is all Sri Lankan, except for a few people like my translators are Lebanese and Syrian. But yes, of course it is the best place to be.
Thank you very much, madam. Our chairman has joined, Bandula Egodake. I'm going to leave the last question to you, Bandula.
Excellency, first of all, I don't have a question to ask you. I'm joining you the last minute to respect you just to say big thank you on behalf of APIT and the management and also the CEO of Roshan Egodage and all the staff. Thank you very much for devoting your time for our students especially. I'm actually I'm in deep down south, so I somehow join you to say big thank you for your commitment on behalf of APIT and also Excellency, APIT known for, I don't have to explain that, known for the quality education. Our basically main objective is to build leaders within So we are on that journey. So main objective is to get people like you all, excellencies, that due to have a direct contact with our students population, for them to give the great experience. During our school time, we didn't have that time. That we want to consider in the younger generation, that you basically giving your thoughts for them to become a leader. You yourself is absolutely fantastic leader. You are representing Sri Lanka. So similar way, we want to have not only the education facility or education ability for our students, they want to have an all-round experience, and they want to be leaders in the country. Whenever they can become a main entrepreneurs or opinion leaders. So once again, Excellency, I know you, but I don't know whether you know me. Anyway, I'm also in the government sector for some time. So thank you very much for once again your commitment and your time. Dr. Rohantha, thank you very much for having this opportunity with Excellency. I think we are on the journey. I please brief Excellency that how much of dignitaries that we are with APIT for last many months, contributing their through inspirational ideas and through supportive contribution. So thank you very much, Excellency.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bandula. Your Excellency Bandula was chairman of the Sri Lanka Export Board, and he is one chairman that got appointed on a consecutive basis to serve 2 to 3 times on as the chairman, and he did a fantastic job when he was in exports, and I'm sure you must have heard about him. He's permanently employed at Nestle. He's an honorary chairman at APIT, and a lovely human being, strong values, and I'm thank you so much for stepping in, Bandula. Your Excellency, it's a fantastic opportunity of actually liaising with you and understanding about Syria and Lebanon and how this whole landscape is changing. We thank you for the fantastic leadership you are giving to the tea industry. Even after sitting for 10 years on the tea board, I never got a chance of visiting your beautiful country that you are in, but you gave so much of view to it. I'm sure we can develop some kind of a picture about it. So thank you very much, and please count us in for your journey of your PhD, and we would love to keep this partnership going. I know you make time for education. I remember once how you came all the way for a University of Colombo Tourism Summit, all the way from China. You just came for the summit and you went back, and that is the kind of commitment you have for education. It's so nice to have people like you giving time for students, because at the end of the day, it's the students who are going to take Sri Lanka forward. Any last parting comments that you would like to leave, Your Excellency?
Yes, in fact, I didn't know much about APIIT, but when you put the advertisement, many people congratulated me. So I was wondering, I think congratulated. Then I understood maybe this is something unknown to me, but this must be a very this organization must be held in high esteem by other people who know about it. So they are congratulating me for being interviewed by you. So thank you very much. I'm much honored. Okay, you must have seen, because I put it on my Facebook and so many people congratulated me. I said, okay, nothing happened so far. It's just a matter of advertisement coming. So I thought that was something about this APIT.
Madam, you must see the comments you got on my Facebook when I posted it. All your friends from all over the world are commenting to you. It's on my wall. You can take. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and I really appreciate. Kaushali, over to you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, an amazing session, amazing experience to be shared. Students, this is where you can be, another opportunity that you can be, another Sri Lankan to go into that stepping. I mean, I'm sure all of you have been listening to her story, and it starts small for all of us, and it can definitely end up very big, just like for her. So, Your Excellency, thank you so much for sharing that humanism and that experience with all our students. And we do have one last question that has come, if I have opportunity to ask that from you, because it's a very passionate question. What is your advice for a very new young graduate like me? So this has been asked, but this is specifically coming from a student who is in the International Business degree program. So if you can share some thoughts on that as a last question, I think I'll be very thankful, because it's definitely for the motivation.
A business student, a young business. Well, of course, you have chosen to read business studies, it has unlimited scope, like in any other discipline. So now once you get your academic knowledge and all the theories that you master, then you must get into some place where you can apply them and see how it can be put into practice. So I would advise, I always do think that theories apart from practice is futile, because we don't know that. You have to put it to practice to see whether it works or not. Some theories work in some scenarios and not in some other scenarios. So, for example, some people can say, if you are selling Sri Lankan products, you must, if you want challenge, then you take a product that has not seen international markets. But of course, at once you can't put into practice everything you know, because you will go as a creeper, like a person who will start. And then you must be part of a team. Like we are part of a team. We belong to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and we are part of the team. We have a foreign secretary. He will guide you. So it is very important to be a part of a team. You have to be a team player, especially in things like, if you are trying to do marketing, then you are a team with the manufacturer. You must give your feedback to the manufacturer, what can be sold, what cannot be sold, what improvements can be done. So this is how it is. I try to always look at it. But of course, best advice for a young person is their own advice. You will go through your life, your own life has a pace, and you yourself will decide what is best for you, what you can do. Just because other people are doing some things, maybe we don't have to do exactly the same thing. We can do our own things. We find, like, people who study different disciplines move into entirely different fields of vocations. So as we go along that, we see better opportunities, better things. But of course, for everyone, I would say, give a hand to a person who is struggling. I have tried to do that myself. And also, if we look at, you may be Christian or Buddhist or a person of Islamic faith or any other religion or no religion at all, it is when we work in a system, many people will challenge you and give you a real hard time. Everyone who has come to the top has gone through this hard time. The cleverer you are, the harder you are going to face challenges, and people will try to give you. And one general advice, looking back from what I have experienced, is no need to bother about those who bother you, because I think it is much better to forgive them, as Jesus had said, or as Buddha had said. To forgive all those people, because it doesn't contain much tension for young people. Like, I have come across situations, I have also seen real hard times, especially for clever children, very hard times, in school or in other places. If you're average people's life is less perilous, it goes easier. But if you are clever, you are a straight A student, then of course I always believe that we just forgive everyone who gives us a real hard time, and you continue to get your A's, maybe B plus, even if you get a C, no problem. So this is what I think from my experience. I think we try to, be peace with ourselves. Then it is easier. When other people do well, we are very happy.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I appreciate. I mean, it's so humbling to see people who have gone in very high esteem and simple philosophies of life that I suppose, if you were to add the dots together, coming from Badulla and then coming to Colombo and then conquering the world from Toronto to Russia to China and to Lebanon. I mean, it's lovely to see somebody coming from rural Sri Lanka and going up there. It just gives a motivation to a lot of the people who are in Colombo, who have all those luxuries, to know that it is not the luxuries that matter, it is your will and your determination that actually takes you, and you're an epitome of that statement. So thank you very much.
Yes, that brings us to an end of another webinar series, which is the very first webinar for the year. So while thanking all of you, and I'm sure you had a wonderful session and an experience shared, we would like to see you back again and to meet you back again in another few days' time with our next webinar series, introducing you to another experience from another expertise. With that, we would say good night.